This is the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount, best-selling author of Fanatical Prospecting, Sales EQ, Objections, and Inked, and I'm here to help you fill up your pipeline, close bigger deals, and rock your commission check. I'm going to tell you straight up, I love this podcast episode. I like it because I had an opportunity to spend some time with Brian Knox, who was a fan, who read Fanatical Prospecting, started a business, and then sent me a note and told me how much Fanatical Prospecting helped him build his business. He started his business this year. It's been phenomenally successful. And I think what you're going to find is that this conversation all chase and achieve our dreams if we just make that go to Barnes & Noble, go wherever books are sold, and pick up a copy of my brand new book, Virtual Selling. This book has been it's been a global bestseller. Salespeople all over the world are reading it because virtual selling is the ultimate guide to selling and thriving in a virtual world. Go get Virtual Selling today. Now, here's my conversation with Brian Knox about how he used sales skills to build his new business. Gravy Podcast. I'm with sales and entrepreneurship. And I love Brian's story. I like what he's done. And we connected online and I invited him on the podcast because it's real. Like, this is what everybody is thinking about and doing. Like, it's one thing to listen to, say, me and Anthony Anarino talk about sales from, our standpoint of authors and trainers. It's a completely other perspective to listen to someone like Brian, who is in the trenches building a business and doing all the things that we talk about and doing it in unique ways that allow him to grow. So Brian, welcome to the Sales Gravy Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeb. Thrilled to be here.
Awesome. So let's just start off with, first of all, your favorite city. So you're based in Greenville, South Carolina. We were just talking about that in the pre-show.
Yeah.
I love that city, country where you could have, a place to raise your family and be upstate South Carolina. Awesome. So Tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to the place that you are today. And then we'll talk about how you've been using sales techniques and prospecting techniques to build your business.
For sure. So I was in corporate life from the time I graduated college in 2000 all the way up until 2020. And like the last 4 jobs that I had in the corporate world were sales related. So at first it was kind of like inside sales, customer service. I moved in where our training was basically watching a guy do it for 2 days. And then it was, here's a computer, here's your phone. And you're kind of on your own. Learn, I like to read. And I was honestly trying to ease the pain of, man, how do I sit here for 8 hours a day and draw? I was adverse to it. And that's where I first found your material. After that, I moved into a sales coaching role with a local plumbing, air, and electric company, where I was teaching their technicians some of the basics of sales psychology, and going out in the field with them and kind of helping them with their sales process. And then after that, I was in develop, and that's where then I really got to put into practice what I for Habitat for Humanity. Then I let that go.
So why photography? Like, why? I mean, that's you tell that story and you look, dude, I like taking pictures, and like you start building a business. Like,
photography. He didn't ever really like train me or take me under his wing or anything, but I was at least exposed to. And then when I got a digital camera, that kind of launched it for me. It was very simple for us as the everyday user to make art by going out and clicking a shutter. And so I did it for fun. I did it for hobby. I did it. I would do it on the side. Like, I did start to pick up some initial gigs, which they're typically family or, a young baby or whatever. So I started to pick up some of those jobs, and, it made money. It kind of chugged along making a little money, for 10 years. And I was always fine with that. But then I think I really began to apply sales techniques to what was at that point my side hustle. And then I started to get traction with that. And so it started to grow. And then I had this huge just period of like 6 months of wrestling of like, do I quit and go full time with this? Or do I just kind of keep it, as a side thing? And I honestly began to feel like it was more of a contribution to society and to the world and whatever for me to take my skill and talent and then give that in the form of photography, as opposed to, being in the sales trenches at that point.
I remember when I first started sales grading, this was 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And, a similar thing, except for we were in the middle of a great recession and I had to make a pivot in my career. That wasn't my choice. And I decided that at that point in my life, I was either going to be an entrepreneur or not. Like I'd always wanted to run my own business.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be an owner. And because I was good at selling and great in the corporate world, I made a lot of money
Hmm.
in big corporations, and it was in relatively cushy jobs. I mean, they
Yeah.
take really good care of you. And so there was never a lot of incentive until one day I found myself on the street trying to figure out what I was going to do. But I remember the first part of that time. You started in February. This for me lasted about 3 years,
Sure.
where I was constantly terrified that I was going to fail.
Hmm.
Like I lived in this, like I would wake up in the middle of the night and be, like in a cold sweat. Like, am I going to make it? Am I going to fail? Am I going to crawl back and beg for, a job? Am I, I'm going to let my wife down and let my kid down, all of those things. And I think everybody's entrepreneurial journey is a little bit different. I'm wondering, like when you first
Yeah.
started your business and you made that leap, and I can feel that, that angst inside of you, like as you're trying to figure out, do I go full time? Do I let go of what I'm used to? Clearly you're working for Habitat for Humanity, which is a noble
Yeah.
job and a noble profession. And you make that decision. What was it like when you first started? And are you still in that place where
Yeah.
there's a point in time where you're like, am I going to make it today or not?
No, thankfully, thankfully it's gone really well this year, but I definitely had those same concerns, Jeb, and those same misgivings. I do remember also waking up in the middle of the night and and wrestling with like, well, what if it rains that whole next day and then I can't do the outdoor construction shoot, and so I don't make any money that day, and like your brain just goes to all these irrational places about why you're going to fail. I think, you know, it's probably not a real common stance or whatever, but I did have someone say like, remember that it's reversible. Remember that if at some point you it's not going well, you can turn around and go back and get a day job or a W-2 job. And that was a little comforting. You also hear people say burn the boats and just don't give yourself any opportunity to go back, and then you'll, of course, drive yourself to success. I was kind of in that first group that was like, I'm going to go try this. I'm going to regret this if I don't try it. And if all else fails, then I can go back and get a regular job. Now the stakes were higher because the Habitat job was the best job that I ever had. Those were the best people. It was the best mission. It was my favorite job. I had a lot of autonomy and leeway, a great boss. And man, the stakes were high because I was like, if I fail, I'm going to have to go back to something that just is not as great as this current job. But I don't think if you go out and try, I don't see it as failure if you don't have great success and you do have to turn around. I think the credit does go to the person in the arena, the person who goes out and goes for it, tries to fight, tries their hand at their dream. And what I've sensed, Jeb, is a ton of respect and support once I did that. Like, it's incredible how people come around you. If you make a statement and say, hey, I'm stepping out on the day job and here I go on my dream, people come around you and they almost believe in you more than yourself. At least that was the case for me.
I think there's a lot to be said about how your belief system, your attitude, attracting people and opportunities into your life. Even in our own business, for example, this fall, this has been
Yeah.
an interesting year. We've had the best year in our company's history this
Wow.
year, and we have 26 people on our team now, and we made a decision to hire this person, just a really talented person. We didn't have a place for her to go in our organization. We just hired her,
Yeah.
and we're thinking, okay, well, this is going to be a big bet, but we brought this really talented person, and I just have a philosophy, like when you find talent, grab it, like get it into your organization. And
Yeah.
suddenly our business exploded around this person. Like there's something
Mm.
about like doing it, and like you said, being the person that's willing to take the risk and go out there, that creates those opportunities. And by the way, I believe that about prospecting as well. I think the salespeople who are prospecting get lucky. Like you
Yes.
make your luck through the work that you're doing. And it's not always like a direct, like I talked to this person, therefore I get, but I talked to this person, they told somebody else, my phone rings. And sometimes we
Yes.
don't put all those dots together, but I do believe that's true.
Yep.
So a couple of things I want to explore
Mhm.
here. First of all, photography is, it's one of those professions, and I put it in. Don't get
Yeah.
mad at me don't kill the messenger, but I put it in the same sort of place as I want to be an author, or I
Yes.
want to I want to own a I want to own a fun bar. Like I've always wanted to own a pizza joint. I want to own
Yep.
like I want to call it Brick House Pizza. I want it to be wood fired. Like people come into my place to get a cold beer, they buy pizza. Like it's my side hustle dream. And my wife, who was my CFO's, the company CFO, every time I
Yeah.
say it, she's like, never, ever, ever, ever are you gonna be anywhere near a restaurant ever. Like, so it's just one of those things. Like being I hear people, I want to be a photographer. So people have that dream, and then they get into it, and they don't realize how insanely competitive it is
Yeah.
because everybody wants to be a photographer. Like it's really hard.
True.
And so a lot of people get into photography and very quickly exit photography because they find it hard to make a living.
Yeah.
So and maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong about this, but that's at least the way I see photography, in a place where you have that level of competition. And
Yeah.
truly anybody who has a digital camera, and even I can take
Yeah.
pretty good pictures these days with
Yep.
some of the new, like we run we just bought a bunch of the new Sony 7000 alphas that just
Yes.
came out.
Yeah.
Like we're having to track them down. We found one the other day ago, and like we bought it right on the spot because it was somebody brought it back. And we run those in our
Great.
studio, all of our virtuals. We have a sound studio here. So, but even I can look pretty good, right? On a camera, I
Yep.
can take pretty
Yep.
decent pictures. So in a world where everybody can get in, and I think this is important for salespeople as well, they're out there thinking, man, my competitors, they got lower prices, they got this, they're beating me up, blah, 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 blah. You jump into one of the most competitive industries in the world, like, and try to make a living in it. Talk to me about that.
Tremendous, tremendous topic, Jeb. I think people do buy you. I really believe that it comes down to that. Yeah, the marketplace is super crowded, and there are 100 other photographers that can come and take your real estate listing photos, your headshot photos, your company's website photos. There are a ton of others that can do that and do it really well. Um, you you really end up, especially as an entrepreneur, selling yourself, your vision, your passion, your process, how you go through homework before the shoot, your personality, how you respond to texts and emails. And so in some sense, jumping into a crowded marketplace is daunting because, hey, this guy can get their need met 100 other ways. But in another way, it really lets you express yourself fully and be who you are, knowing that by being a little different, by being unique in some way that's unique to you, you can separate yourself from the competition. And so I think that once I will talk with other photographers, and I say that once you're past about a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of talent, once you're past about a 6, 6.5, 7, it all becomes about relationship. It all becomes about sales, um, who you can meet with that likes you, connects with you, and likes your way of operating. Because they're not going to go, well, let me go and find the level 8 photographer. I have to get that level 8 photographer. They want to work with you because they like you. I still believe you should grow excellent at your craft, and we should move towards 8 and 9 and 10. But at a certain point, the sales hunt is about talking to people who just want to do business with you. And you have to be decent at your craft and be able to perform under pressure. But that's how it went for me. Like I just started to sell myself. I would just share my life and my photos on social media, and that started to attract what I've been able to build into a pipeline.
Well, isn't it just true that what you just said, the more people you talk with, the more pictures you take, the more clients you have, the more
Totally.
opportunities that come in. I mean, it's all about talking with people, and it's all human. So I
Yep.
love what you said. Like it's the, like, especially let's just break down the real estate example. If you're
Yep.
working with a couple of brokers and they're listing houses, what they
Yep.
really want is they want to trust that you're going to you're going to pick up the phone when they call, you're going to go get the job done, you're going to go get the photos that they want because you've taken time to understand them, and then you're going to get it up and running for them fast on Zillow or wherever else they're
Yes,
putting these photos, so that they don't have to think about it, so they can go focus on real estate. I mean, they could probably go take the pictures
totally.
themselves, right? But
Yes.
they want to go knock on another door and get another listing. They don't want to deal with this. So it's all about trust, that they can let you loose and you're going to get the job done. And when you do that, they go tell somebody else how good you are.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with this example too, in that, Jeb, I'm not, with real estate photos especially, I'm not selling just a well exposed bedroom photograph. I'm selling that real estate agent their time back. And I was able to kind of understand the value of sales. I started to see it in my own journey, my own life. And that's what those realtors are doing. They're selling their butt off every day. If they can have another meeting, another coffee, get another contract, that's what's paying their bills. Like, for them, shooting photos is a very low value activity, I would say. And so that's what I would put that right in my copy that I would send to real estate agents. I put that right in my copy. Like, I'm not saying my photos are tremendously better than anyone else's, but you can trust me and rely on me to operate efficiently so that you can move on to a higher leverage activity, like getting the next lead into your pipeline.
Yeah, I love that. I so dig that, because I think that's that's the difference between the ideal of, I want to be a photographer, or I'm an author,
Yeah,
so I want to be an author,
yeah,
and or I want to own a bar or a pizza place. Like, what it is about, you got to go solve problems, and problem solvers are the champions of the world. The ideal
yes,
the photographer, that wants to get in because they love taking pictures. I take better pictures. They're pitching pictures. You're
yes.
pitching what your pictures solve. It's not the end. It's not the picture. It's the service. Like, it's what I'm doing for you. It's peace of mind. And clearly that shifts. Like, for example, if you're taking pictures of a wedding, or, of someone's child and their family pictures, I mean, there's a lot of emotion that's involved in that as well. So it's what I found with those type of relationships. It's the photographer that sits down and creates the entire experience. So
Right.
it's not just we're snapping photos, but they're sitting down and talking with us and asking us, what do you want? And what's important to you? What do you want to capture? What are you looking for? What are your family values? And listening to us and making us feel like we're part of the process.
Yes.
And then taking the pictures part of the process, and then the artwork on the back end to make them look the way that you want them to look. But still the same thing. It's not about the picture. It's about the emotion that we feel while we're working with that individual person. And it's that emotion that
Mm.
causes us to tell other people. So your buyer's emotional experience while they're working with you is a more consistent predictor of outcome than any other variable. You said this, people buy you,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
That's it. But it all begins with, you got to go talk with people. And I think that's
Yes.
probably the biggest issue that I find with entrepreneurs. Now, I've said this all the time. Like, I said this to authors. Like, authors, I want to be an author and write books. I go, great, great. Here's the deal. Writing a book is hard. I know that because I'm
Yeah.
writing one right now. Yesterday
Yep.
afternoon, I was a miserable day. Like, it was raining. I was sitting next to a
Yep.
fireplace. I was in a leather chair, thinking about all the, like, this is all the the ideal. But I was like in the middle of this book, and I spent 12 hours in the middle of it, and it sucked, because I'm like, God, there are a million things I'd rather do than sit here and try to pound out of my brain. And you do all that hard work, and it's almost impossible to get people to buy a book. And by the way, if you want to sell a book, you got to get on the road. Like, you make money
Mm.
on the road. Like, you want to sell an
Yeah.
album, if you want to play guitar, you want to make money,
Yeah.
go do concerts, which means you're never home. So people don't get that. They don't understand that there's a hustle
Mm.
involved in getting this done. And I think
Oh,
entrepreneurs have the same problem. Like, they say, they're like, it's like Field of Dreams. They want to be Kevin Costner. Like, I'm going to build it and they're going to come. And it doesn't work that way. As an entrepreneur, you got to be fanatical about prospecting. You got to be a
yes.
nut job about building your business. And I think a lot of
Mm.
entrepreneurs forget about the sales side as they're building this ideal vision of what their business is going to
Mm.
be. And in the meantime, they don't make any money, and they're not, they're building their blog and putting their business cards and doing all this other stuff. And, and 3 weeks later, they're back, hunting for a
Yes.
job because they can't make money. So talk to us a little bit about what entrepreneurs need to know about prospecting and pipeline building. And it sounds like you've bought into an
Yeah.
omni-channel approach, so you're using
Yes.
everything that you can to get people to come to you, both inbound and outbound. Talk to us about that. And
Yeah.
you came from a sales background. But did you struggle with some of this as you were building your business in terms of, of turning on that hustle? And there's one more thing, Brian, I want you to
Yeah.
talk about is what do you do on those days where you get really full? Like you got a lot
Ooh,
of business coming in, and in your world, like that's going to last for a while, and then you got to go hustle again. How do you remain consistent in your business
yeah.
development practices while you're running the rest of your business? Another big issue
Whew.
that impacts entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So to the very first part, you need to have passion. I think that is a prerequisite. You got to have it. You should have it for whatever you're doing, making jewelry, taking photos, whatever it is. You need to have that passion. But there's that meme out there where the guy's like, he's pointing to his friend and like he's like, look everybody, he's following his passion. See, no one cares. It's unfortunate, but in some sense, people don't really care that you just went and followed your passion. You have to channel that into what you can do for them. You have to channel that into your sales and prospecting techniques, like your drive to go out there and make it. So I think you should have that passion and you should share it. But that on its own, it's not going to be enough, Jeb. You do have to talk to people. I think a great practical shortcut right here is to show your work. That is how I started, Jeb. I would go shoot the photos. I would post, or I would shoot. I would edit them. I would post them to Facebook. So I was side hustling. I go shoot, edit, post to Facebook. Shoot, edit, post to Facebook. Then I started to get traction. Hey, can you come out and shoot the swim meet? Hey, can you come out and shoot me with my dog? Hey, our company needs new website photos. So it started to build a little bit organically, but I was showing my work. I wasn't waiting to be discovered. This is one of those big soapbox topics that'll get me cranked up like an old man, is that you're not going to get discovered. No one's going to discover you. You have to show your work. And I think people will be better served by consistently putting their stuff out there instead of sitting back and going, I'm excellent, I'm great, I'm a killer photographer, and why aren't companies finding me? They're not going to find me. And so I started to you realize that if I wanted to shoot with certain brands or shoot in certain industries, that I had to reach out to them. And I had some success I've had success throughout the year. I had one recently with a tactical company out of California. And once they agreed to the little package that I had built for them, and they're like, yeah, Brian, go ahead with the shoot. Some of my close supportive friends were like, that's amazing. You got that customer, you got to work with them, and like, you're doing great things or whatever. And I really appreciate that. But I wanted to say, I got to shoot with that company because I sent them a cold email. I sent them an email with a buying option on the menu that said, this is what I can do for you to advance your brand and your visibility on social media. And they bit and they took it. Like, they didn't find me. 2 months ago, they didn't know about Brian Knox. They would have never found me. So I had to go out. And so I do encourage people, you got to go chase sometimes. You have to pursue. And you should pursue the ones that you want to work with, because they will say yes eventually. Balancing sales and running the business, man, that's a big one. I actually had it as a question for you, Jeb, which is that it's easy to start to reach overwhelm when you're the sole proprietor and you're doing the billing and the marketing and the shooting and all of that stuff. So I've stayed pretty busy. I've stayed pretty close to burnout much of this year, I can say. But I'm also very excited by the possibility of selling, and I very much believe in it. And so I'll kind of wrestle with that, like, well, I have a lot of business and this is great, but at the same time, I want to be selling more. And I've just kind of wondered and wanted to maybe throw back, like, how do I throttle between, driving or pursuing the business that I want and those next big accounts, but also delivering on the day to day. I think part of the answer lies in curating the type of business that you take in. Like Jeb, I said yes to every job
Yep.
when I first started. And it's just not the best technique. You need to when you start because you're hungry. But I realized that every yes that I'm telling a company is also saying no to another opportunity.
Yeah, I think that when I started Sales Gravy, and this wasn't like this lasted for years. I took anything because I got to
Yes.
build,
Yes.
and some of those yeses came back to haunt me because they were taking me away from other things. Some of them turned out to be the greatest yeses I ever said yes to. I
Yeah.
mean, they changed the organization. I don't think as an entrepreneur you have much of a choice. I mean, it's really nice to idealistically say, well, all customers aren't good customers, but when you're
Yes.
trying to, pay the light bill, any customer is a good customer. I think what happens over time is that there's a curve. Like as you grow and get more mature, you start saying, this is what I want. And it's almost like in your world, you're like an airplane, right? As the seats fill up
Hmm.
on the airplane, then you can raise your prices. You can be more picky with what you want. And by the way, it's no different for a salesperson. If you've got a full pipeline, you can be really picky about the deals that you're going to work on so that you spend your time on the most lucrative deals that have the highest probability of closing. If you've got
Yeah.
an empty pipeline, look, you're going to take anybody that calls or says yes to you. You're going to show up. You're going to drive across town 8 hours, right, in order to go see a company for 20 minutes that may or may not do business with you ever. But when you're
Yep.
full, you don't have to do this. So part of being an entrepreneur, like in your world, is fill up the airplane. Then it gets a
Yep.
lot easier.
Yep.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with, when you get started saying yes. And that's part of that. Just, you start teaching yourself through the mistakes that you made, what not to do. And by the way, from the victories that you achieve, you start learning what good looks like. I think that's
Hmm.
important. I think the hardest thing though is, as you start getting full, especially when you're a sole, proprietor, a sole entrepreneur, you're doing
Hmm.
everything, is you get a big job and then you quit prospecting for a couple of weeks. So we talk about the
Yes.
30-day rule in Fanatical Prospecting. So the prospecting you do in any given 30-day period has a tendency to pay off over the next 90 days. And I'm sure that you found that in your own business, like the work that you're doing now to connect with people, you're somewhere in the next 90 days, you start getting a payback from that. Well, you take a week off or 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off or 4 weeks off, then suddenly you're on the desperation roller coaster. I mean, this is the problem for a lot of
Yep.
entrepreneurs, right? They live in the feast or famine amusement park. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. Salespeople do the same thing. And it's a really awful way to live because there's so much anxiety, so much stress, so much pressure.
Yep.
And when you feel anxiety, stress, and pressure, what do? You make really bad decisions. You start saying yes to everything again. And you don't want to do that. So the key thing for me with entrepreneurs is you got to schedule time every single day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day for business development, every day. Clearly there's going to be some days where you can't always do that. Let's just say that you get pulled into, y'all got a big BMW plant up there, right? So BMW hires you and they bring you in and you're on a multi-day
Yep.
shoot with them, covering everything.
Yep.
There's going to be days when your business development may be 5 minutes. There's other days when you got a full day, like
Yeah.
you may spend the whole day on business development. My I guess advice is never let a day go by that you don't do something. If you always
Yeah.
do something around business development, you will never go hungry. But the problem with
Yep.
prospecting is, and the way that I describe it is long stretches of pain, grind, and suck, interrupted by a few brief moments of elation, right? It's like
Totally.
I'm on a diet right now and I've lost 12 pounds and I'm getting to the fatigue level of this stupid diet because I'm hungry. And like
Yep.
this is the time when it matters. Like, if I let a day go by or I take a day off, it's really easy to take the next day off because it sucks.
Yep.
And you can't allow yourself to do that as an entrepreneur if you want to remain consistent in your business and continue to make great decisions. That also,
Mm.
you said something about passion, and I think that this is something we hear all the time. And I love the way that you explained this. The way I look at passion is, look, you got a passion. It's awesome to be able to follow your passion. Awesome. It is way better to bring your passion with you wherever you go and with whatever you're doing, because
Hmm.
you need that passion that you have to help you do the hard things when you need to do the hard things. And,
Hmm.
working on a project, serving your client, taking care of them, that's the fun stuff.
Yep.
Calling a stranger, cold calling, reaching out,
Hmm.
going to a networking events, following up on things. That's the hard stuff.
Yep.
And I just don't know how you survive as an entrepreneur if you're not willing to do the hard stuff. Otherwise, you have as a hobby rather than
Yep.
a business that you can grow. But
Yeah.
I think there's one thing I could say to you, and this is, my advice is you're going to get to some point, since you're really successful, where you have to start making some decisions about what type of business you're going to be.
Mm.
And that
Yes.
is, are you going to continue to be a sole proprietor business where you're doing all the work,
Hmm.
or are you going to scale?
Hmm.
And if you scale, that means you got to bring on other
Hmm.
photographers.
Hmm.
Because you're a good salesperson, you can cover sales for a while. but you
Mm-hmm.
can't cover the work. Right. So
Yep.
if you can go out and bring more business in and you bring another photographer in and you pay that photographer, a salary or what have you, it's sort of like me with trainers. Like, the more trainers I bring in, the more we can scale up, because I can't do all the training. And for a long
Yep.
time, I was doing all the training. It was killing me. Like I got to a point where there's a couple of years I don't even remember, Brian, because I didn't sleep.
Sure.
So there's this point in time when you got to make that decision. What am I going to do? The good news is you're a good salesperson, so it probably made more sense for you to bring in another photographer. And then,
Mm-hmm.
clearly you got to have, non-competes. If you ever want to call me up, I'll help you with this, right?
Yeah.
Non-competes. And you got to have, you got to have a contract with them, and you got to lock them in, and they can't take your clients and compete against you and do those things. But on the flip side of that, the bargain is you give them steady work. They don't have to go prospect, because there's a lot of people out there that have their ideal is to be a photographer, but they don't want to go do the hustle that you're willing to do. And
Yeah.
because you're willing to go do the hustle, you can do things that they can't do. You have the opportunity to build a much bigger business that you can grow into. And then they can do for you what you're trying to do for the people that you serve, is give them back they give you back some time.
Totally. Yeah, no, a great question that I've been wrestling with, Jeb, especially in this first year, is like, because I do enjoy shooting so much and doing the homework and going delivering the product and stuff. I love that so much, but you're right. You're really in the business, like when you were training, and it can wear on you, and you have really long days, and it starts to just drag you down a little bit, because we have limited bandwidth that we can give out to others. So, I don't know exactly what that looks like for me yet. I'm still kind of young in the business, and just want to figure out how to design my life so that I make sure I don't create a job. I don't want to create a soul sucking job or a tremendous amount of stress. But I do also have to start to relieve that active income versus passive income in some way. It's very, very active income right now, in that I have to be there. I have to have the camera. I have to be on site. But to your point, I am definitely looking at ways to try to change that percentage a little bit.
Well, the good news is that you know how to sell. I love this conversation because it's so uplifting and so inspiring.
Yeah.
B Knox, like working in a good job and got this side hustle, decides to go full time, uses sales skills to ramp up the business in the middle of a really hard year to ramp up a business. Like, I mean, if you could have picked the worst year to start a company, like, I imagine that in February when you started the company, in March when we shut the country down, like suddenly you were like, did I sign up for this thing at the right time? But I think I think that your story, like, if people are listening to this, what you explained is like, this isn't that complicated. Find something that you like to do, that you're good at. I did the same thing. Like, when I lost my job and had to go do something, I'm like, the only thing I know how to do is sell. So I focused on that. So find something that you like to do, that you're good at, and then understand that just because you're good at it, just because you're talented at it, that's not enough. Like, once you get, like you said, once you get past the 6 or 7 on the talent scale, the rest of it's hustle. The rest of it's your ability to make connections and talk with people and build relationships and build your business. And then at some point, like, if you get really good at that, if you can sell, then you can accomplish anything. And entrepreneurship is selling at its heart and soul. So killer story. But if you got one last piece of advice for our listeners, whether they're salespeople or entrepreneurs, from what you've learned over the years, what would you leave us with?
Yeah, Jeb, I got to reference Jim Rohn right here, my friend. Jim Rohn, just a business philosopher from like a decade or two ago, had a simple sales course. The simple sales course was talk to lots of people every day, and I hear a lot from entrepreneurs. I don't like to self-promote. I don't want to sell myself. I don't know how to do it, etc. You can get around a lot of that by talking to lots of people every day. It might take the form of text, direct messages, phone calls, emails, etc. It doesn't matter what form it takes. But if you should be passionate about your work, be good at it. And if you're willing to go out and talk to lots of people every day, as Jim Rohn says, even if you said, hey, you don't want my service, do you? Eventually, you're going to have someone who says, maybe I do. Tell me about it. And I'm telling you that when you infuse it with passion and you're decent at it, people will want your service, or they will want your product. So get out there and talk to lots of people.
Love it. More people you talk with, right? The more you're going to sell.
Yep.
B
Yep.
Knox, B Knox of
Woo.
B Knox Photography. Thank you so much for joining me on the Sales Gravy podcast. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm doing lots of podcasts right now because we're in the middle of our main production season. And I got to tell you, of all the podcasts I've done this week, this is my absolute favorite. It is so refreshing to have a conversation with someone who is really in the trenches, really doing it. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this and join us for the next episode. I hope that was as inspirational for you as it was for me. Now, make sure that you go and pick up a copy of my brand new book, Virtual Selling. This book will give you everything that you need to crush it in a virtual world. And if you're looking to up your skills even further, go to salesgravy.com and click on the e-learning tab at the top of the page and go check out Sales Gravy University. We have hundreds of courses there, both live and in e-learning for you or your entire team. Sales Gravy University. I'll see you next time.